Hi everyone. So just wanted to do a quick talk today. I thought it'd be good just to maybe look back at just the history very quickly of OVS DPDK and what are the features being introduced, but more than that, then try and gather, are there any changes coming into the community from that? Is there change either in the trends of the type of features being implemented, where typically they would be implemented in the code base, and then is there any kind of implications from that we can use to improve our own development process? So this is just a chart. When I kind of started this, I said it would just be nice, let's look at just the news item for each release of OVS and just see what's specific to DPDK and user space. And from that, can we plot any kind of differences as each release came out? And essentially, what we have on the left-hand side is just a number count for the number of line items that were in the news release. We're not going to look through each one, but I'll call out some of the key ones as we go through. And then we'll kind of explain what impact that kind of has then as the community kept growing and new releases came out. So I suppose going back to day one, OVS 2.2 was DPDK 1.6 was actually in place. And that's a long time back. I think this was even an internal release at this point for OVS. We build on top of that. I think by OVS 2.4, our first virtual port for user space was introduced with VOS queues. There was nothing done in OVS 2.3 around the DPDK base, at least as regards our release notes. But building on that, I think the first interesting point is by the time we get to OVS 2.5, you see we've had to move DPDK versions. So we've now moved to DPDK 2.2, and we've added multi-queue support. So I should also kind of point out at this point, OVS DPDK was considered experimental within the OVS community. There was a lot of feature parity missing, and we kind of had to put all that in place really, and ideally to get recognized as a valid kind of data path now that can be used. By the time we get to OVS 2.6, I think there's 15 line items. We won't go through all of them, but as you can see, there's just another number of things that you could call out. So we've things like database configuration, QoS and ingress configuration. We have another move in DPDK version to 16.07. At this point, DPDK started using the calendar versioning system, jumbo frame support, VOS user client port types. So it's kind of a big release in the OVS DPDK timeline. And building on that, by the time we get to OVS 2.7, we actually moved to DPDK 16.11, which was DPDK's first long-term support release. And we also removed the experimental tag, which was kind of a goal for, as I said, the data path to be recognized. And from this point on, it was, okay, all this work at this point, a lot of it was taking place, I would say, in the NetDev DPDK code base. Not all of it, but a lot of it. And it's from here on in, we start seeing that there's a couple of more changes for OVS 2.8. We moved DPDK version again. But it's one of the first times we actually see work being done at, I would say, the EMC level to help improve DPDK usability. And, what's the effect in that? Well, it was just to improve performance around EMC in terms of how ports or how flows are being installed. It's the first hint of where the work for OVS needs to go, I think, at this point. By the time we go to 2.9, we see that we're onto DPDK 17.11 now. So I think in that 8 releases, we've changed DPDK 6 times. So that's a hint of something that will continuously change, and we need to be aware of that. But we also see the work again breaking out to outside of the NetDev DPDK level, things like custom statistics, orgs queue utilization distribution, output packet batching, all that kind of stuff is done at a higher level than our NetDev. And again, it's just with a view to improving. It came from people who were, contributing to the OVS DPDK aspect, but there was only so much we could do at the NetDev level. And finally, moving up to our OVS 2.10 release, again, unit tests, hardware offload, SMC, so an alternative to our DPCLS and EMC, and performance metrics. So there's kind of 2 things I said that would kind of strike me. One, DPDK is always going to keep changing. The frequency to that in the past has fluctuated. I think we're now in a more stable approach towards that, as will be described later. But the thing is, we kind of stick to LTS releases for the bug support, to take advantage of bug support, patching in DPDK, and also just that a lot of future work will actually move into layers above the NetDev DPDK. And with that in mind, I suppose just 2 things we've implemented to make people aware of. I suppose this year we actually brought 2 new branches into OVS, in part of the central repo. One is DPDK latest. So this is OVS Master targeting DPDK Master. The idea of this is that we can start integrating DPDK at a much earlier stage, and any API or ABI breakages, we can flag that back to the DPDK community or give any requirements there that we think they'll need. And that's working quite well. I think the 18.11 work that's just gone on is actually went quite well, and we've fixed most issues without a lot of problems, to be honest. And then finally, I suppose, DPDK hardware offload. This was the decision taken there's a lot of different hardware offload devices out there that can be used. Just give a central location and kind of use this as an experiment to drive the development until it's merged into master at a later stage. So these are just 2 different ideas I think that have come out of this. And Yep, that's it.
All right, let's thank our speaker.